Nick Goldsmith is a former Royal Marine Commando who served his country from 2007 to 2018, completing 6 operational deployments in some of the world's most challenging regions. After leaving military service, Nick turned his focus towards championing mental fitness. His deep personal understanding of nature's role in supporting mental well-being has not only influenced our perceptions, but has secured him a place as a thought leader in this field. As an international speaker and best-selling author, he connects with global audiences, offering inspiration derived from his own experiences. His company, Valley Bushcraft, has been recognized for its innovative outdoor activities that amplify positive mental fitness. Nick, alongside his wife Louise, founded the acclaimed Woodland Warrior Programme in 2017. This initiative, brought into the limelight by a 2022 BBC documentary, has harnessed nature's therapeutic power to aid rehabilitation for armed forces emergency service personnel. With support from distinguished organizations such as the Invictus Games, the Veterans Foundation, and now the Blue Light Card Foundation, the program is now deep into its 7th year. His best-selling book, Rewild Your Mind, is a testament to his advocacy for the crucial role of nature in mental health. Despite his impressive achievements, Nick's humility shines through. His engaging presence and charismatic nature continue to drive a profound movement towards valuing nature as a key vital resource for mental resilience. We've got Nick on. Nick, how are you, man?
Yeah, all is well here. It's a little later here in the UK. We're now at 2100 hours, but I've got some coffee, so life is good.
Well, like we said, if you didn't like coffee, would have just booted you off the show. It would have been a 30-second podcast. So glad you got a coffee.
But I mean, I could have been drinking tea, but again, I didn't want to get thrown off the show. So yeah, I understand how this. I'm aware.
So for those who have not followed Nick Goldsmith at all, he's a very interesting guy. Again, he's a former Royal Marine, and he's done a lot more. So I want to get into the show and talk about quite a few things, and I don't think we'll have the time to talk about all of it. But he has a book he's written about rewilding your mind. He's doing a lot of things outdoors. He's got a small little garden. He's built quite a bit of a resume, and so we're going to get into it. First off, Nick, let's talk about your military service. You were on a different show with us, and we covered some of that, but you're on Silencio Coffee now. Can you tell me where you're at right now? What are you doing now, and how'd you get there from the military service?
So I served for 11 years as a Royal Marine, just under. And I typically went through the pipeline as a civilian, wanted that aspiration of earning my Green Beret. Went through the pipeline, got through in one go, did various tours, deployments, did 6 operational deployments around the globe, 4 of which were just because of my particular time of service and me going through was going to be Afghanistan. Let's face it, it would have been Iraq or Afghanistan. For me, it was Afghanistan. And then I subsequently medically retired in 2018. Okay, so I was downgraded and diagnosed, was suffering quite badly back then, in particular with PTSD, and I didn't recognize it or know it myself, but everyone around me could see it. And so that then led on to a bit of a journey of self-discovery. And you've probably heard this thing before, but most vets then go through that, who the hell am I if I'm not this thing that I've moved heaven and earth to be? And we crave, we need that self-worth, purpose, identity, legacy. And I found it in through spending vast amounts of time back in the great outdoors and just putting myself back together. And the only thing that felt right to me at that time was sitting around a campfire. I mean, it was almost like you've seen footage, it's out there on the internet, of people coming back from World War I, World War II, and you can see neurologically they're not right at all. And the guy lights a match or holds a candle in front of them, and they're just still. That kind of thing. That's what it felt like for me. So do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And so I did that, and I started to slowly overhaul myself. I retrained, studied. I found myself pouring through books of Latin, learning all the trees, plants, flowers, chemical compositions, medicine, wild medicine, you name it. I was turning over material, jumping through the hoops. I did some level 4s, year-long courses in subject matter, instruction, leadership, teaching, and yeah, started with working with schools, kids' birthday parties, like low-level stuff, and it just went from there. Today, in my current guise, having written the book Rewild Your Mind, and a little bit further down the line in terms of finishing up as much as I'm prepared to do at the moment with the treatments with the psychologist and psychiatrist. And I now find myself in a position where I have a limited company that offers people the opportunity to come into the great outdoors and rewild their mind, center themselves, and get back on track. And then we have a community interest company, which you guys would call a not-for-profit, which operates differently, much more like a charity, and that is for veterans and emergency services specific. So if you're a blue light, paramedic, police, Royal Marine Commando, whatever your background is, we even let the paratroopers come along and play with us, and everybody gets on fine. And yeah, it's good. It's real good.
So let's go backtrack. So you said something, you move heaven and earth to become something, and then that something has changed. Can you take us back to your foray into the service, and then what were the occurrences that put you out of the service? And can you talk about what happened? Was it a combat op? Was it just consistently?
When you look at the drivers, we all have individual drivers. Like you grew up, or where you grew up, Fred, like there would have been a reason. There would have been something that drove you to go down that route, right? And it could have been a family friend, a bit of male imprinting in the teenage years, and you see that guy and you go, I want to be like that guy when I grow up, whatever it is, because it's not necessarily always your dad, but generally with young men, there is someone that you meet and just strikes and you go, I want to do that. So for me, I actually wanted to play professional rugby. That was the dream, right? So it's all I did, eat, sleep, play rugby. And it didn't happen. I fell just short of where I wanted to be. I played for my county and my region, and I kind of got to a certain standard, and it was all going great. And then I wasn't selected to go any further. And I think I put all my eggs in one basket. I've always been a kind of like, this is what I'm doing kind of guy. So at kind of 16, 17, I start having this wobble. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I have a bit of a chat, and my mum, being a good mum, she drags me along to see my cousin, who has just finished up 5.5 years as a Royal Marine Commando. I didn't kind of know exactly what that was about. I knew it was going to be something army related. It's actually the Royal Navy. And yeah, I came out of that conversation just totally, absolutely refocused. New mission, locked in, and okay, this is what I need to do. But the issue was then I was like 104 kilos, so like 200 and something pound, 19-inch neck. Like I was just built to play rugby and run around a pitch for 80 minutes, maximum power. And I needed to convert that into something that could run forever, wet, tired, doesn't matter, lift, shift. And that's much more about having the engine up there, which I guess you don't really know until you go to find out, right? So yeah, the seed was planted, and the new dream was born. So off I went. I stripped down to 87 kilo. So I dropped like 40 pounds. And then went to Lipstone Commando Training Centre when I was ready to do so. But my parents, and I'm forever thankful for this, they were like, look, you can go with our blessing, but we want you to get a trade. We want you to get a life skill under your belt first. So in the time it took me, rather than just crash the weight off and throw myself in, I was 16, 17. So I didn't actually show up at Commando Training Centre till I was like 20. So I spent those couple of years learning to be a bricklayer, construction, building houses, which is what my grandfather had done after World War II. So he was a tail gunner in a Wellington and then in a Lancaster bomber, and he finished up like a training warrant officer. And then he became a bricklayer after the war. So I'd kind of been around it. He'd obviously taught my dad how to do it. I'd then seen my dad doing it as a youngster, like building patios and everything in our back garden. So I guess, yeah, I just followed that lineage. It made sense to me as a young man. I worked hard, and it is hard work. And then yeah, finally went to Brighton Recruitment Office, where I met Carl, who, if you've seen on the social media, every year we throw ourselves in the elements to raise funds, so fundraising for the Woodland Warrior Programme, the CIC. It's him. I drag him out. So he was unfortunately shot in Afghanistan on the tour after my tour, and has made a good as a recovery as you're going to be, right? But this year in January, we did 315 kilometers coast to coast across the width of the UK, across the mountainous Lake District, across the Pennine Way, and over the notorious Yorkshire moors, which are bleak. We got hit with some of the worst weather Europe has seen in 15 years, and like waist deep snow, like stuff I think Norway in places was easier than that. And so I'm hugely proud. So I met him at that exact moment. We signed up together, and our numerical number, our service number, is one digit at the end different from like how many digits there are in that, millions. So that's pretty cool. And we've been lifelong buddies ever since. So then, so joined up, and away we go. The journey begins, and it's tough. I don't know, really, I always struggle to compare it. So I know that we've gone through an overhaul recently, and people are now saying it's more of a, like somewhere between tier 2 and tier 1. Look, it's very specialist. It's very hard. We always get given the jobs that no one else wants. And that's the kind of way I pitch it, really, as a British commando. That's generally the way. I don't know if have you guys ever had experience of working with us at all? We've never got the best equipment. You've always got the best equipment. And we've got we're here, we're ready. This is us, send us. And by the way, can we borrow 2 Humvees, this, and we want Overwatch, and can we have, yeah, we're like the borrowers. So that's kind of the way it went down. And then, yeah, rolled into tour number 1 with 4-5 Commando, who are based in Scotland, who traditionally would specialize in mountainous operations. So trips to Norway is a regular for those guys. And it's on the East Coast. It is bleak. It's on the East Coast, and every day you're going to turn to, so you go down to company lines and you'll stand there for the register, and whatever you're going to do, like pistol range, unarmed combat, whatever you're doing that day. And you almost need a compass to find company lines, because you're just in this Scottish cloud. You barely see your hand in front of your face. That's every day up there. And so I did my first tour with those guys, and it was very, very kinetic. And that's where all the fighting in the cornfields, in the maize, all that stuff was taking place. So just to paint a picture for you, day 1, we rock up to a place called Sangin, and we're all piled at the back of the helicopter, and we get shown to an accommodation, and the place has been under siege for 24 hours when the rip's taking place. So there's every color of tracer, like Star Wars, coming at the helo as we're flying in, green, red. And first patrol, first day, 50 degrees. So this is like October 2008. And yeah, very, very kinetic. So in that first day, we had to we had to fix bayonets for a start. We had danger close artillery coming in from the 105 light guns that was dropping in front of us. I appreciate you used the 155, so our version the 105, and we had a barrage come in at about 80 meters at that point, because we'd bounded back from the initial ambush. So we'd walked smack into an ambush, which was pretty horrific. And I just remember very cleverly, the enemy had placed a plate, like a dinner plate, upside down in the ground, hastily covered it over, knowing that the point man was going to find it with a metal detector, go firm. So the signal goes up, we all go firm, we're all shaken out across this field. And the area, the kill zone, had been scythed. All the corn had been prepared, scythed. It was all opened up. And yeah, so what happens next was we pretty much had our lives saved by a dog. Call it divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. The dog comes out, starts barking. I'm on a knee. I've got a mini-me, Belgian-made mini-me, so the saw in 5.56. And I've got a 200 round box on there, and I'm on a knee and I'm facing the wrong way. We're alternately angled. And so I remember on the net a thick Scouse Liverpudlian Liverpool accent coming on, saying that he was going to use a mini flare to just fire at the dog, just to get rid of the dogs. It's just yapping and yapping and yapping and giving us away. And the moment he went and fired the mini flare, little did we know there was 9 dudes lined up behind a wall 40-50 meters away, and out comes the conventional marksmanship principles, where the barrel just gets laid on the top and off it goes, empty the whole box at you. So RPKs, PKMs, AK variants, unbelievable. My experience of that was that we had overly oiled our weapons, and so had they. And so, like some sort of naval barrage, where, you know, when you see in the movies when all the cannons fire and there's just so much smoke, no one can see anything. Very, very quickly, it's impossible to see, other than flashes and stuff, like exactly what you're trying to pin down, because it's just corrodite and smoke in the air because you're so close to each other. So we're all lined out, kind of moving along on the floor, trying to change positions. I go through a box. I've then got to do a box change. Now I scooch off to my right. I do my box change, and where I was just laying, the ground stitches up between me and the next guy. At the same time, our section commander is hit through the shoulder because he very bravely stands up on a knee because he realized that the antenna was laying level with the floor and he couldn't get the signal out. So he gets up on a knee to send the message, and in doing so takes one straight through the shoulder. And a guy further along from us got a line burnt down through his neck, but somehow no one else got hit that day. Honestly, it is unreal. I tell you one thing, it is funny. I distinctly remember getting up to peel when it was my turn. So I put down a massive weight of fire. Everybody comes off the back of me. I then get up and I move. And I just, like, I don't consciously remember doing this, but the body just does stuff. Just a massive piss stain down the side of my leg. And running through the corn, and that kind of sound of all the leaves, you know, the corn leaves, the maize leaves, like they're like rubber. And just real heavy legs, like running back into that next ditch, and then box change. Okay, are we good yet? And we start getting this little, I think it was a 51, 52 mil mortar. We start pumping that down, and we're calling in the 105s, and the 105s come in. Oh my God. I remember just putting the rim of my helmet down, tucking my arms and legs in, like trying to keep my mouth open. And just, it sounds like the air is getting torn in half. And I lost all my hearing in my left ear for 3 days. It was horrendous. And then after that, we had to do an amphibious instruction. So we had to then run sideways down the bank into the river up to our chest, and then try and head up to a SOSE-friendly PB, with rounds coming from the PB landing in the water around us, where they were having a bit of a moment and thinking that they were being infiltrated. But anyway, chaos. You've heard the expression, when chaos reigns. So this was my first day introduction, welcome to Afghanistan, in terms of after landing at Bastion and doing your very basic week-long package where you get all your cultural briefs and your ranges, and you practice whatever the latest TTPs, tactics and procedures are on how to breach a compound, because that would change every 2 weeks. And I don't think that's any different to Ukraine now. It's like whatever you do, someone then counters, and you'll counter it with something else, and then you'll try something new, and then they'll try something new. So it just constantly changes. And the best thing you can hope for when you hit the ground is that you're speaking to someone who's just come off the ground, like real recent, and so you'll get a good picture. Otherwise, being so much as 2 weeks late, that could be the end of you. So yeah, that was my experience. And then from there, every single day we would do 18-hour patrols, sentry routine, sangers. You would rotate through being on QRF, so you might just be sat on one of our vehicles, which again you guys thought was hilarious, because you guys at the time were using the Humvees, with like a roof and an armored glass, and we had these very open, sat upright with just a bar between us, and one of those kind of like bits of hardened metal to catch all the wires and stuff, stop you from being garroted. So we were using a completely different platform, which we knew as the Jackal. You might know as the MV, whatever. And yeah, I just remember being laughed at, like, "Where's your armor, man?" Okay, well, this is what we got. And actually, what turned out was the small mud bridges were not able to take the weight of all the up armored Jackals, so we had to go back to the old school, rolling around in the Land Rover with a 50 cal like welded onto a frame on the back, like some kind of technical, and it had a V8 at least, and yeah, so we could go everywhere with that. But you know, it's terrifying. It's terrifying because it won't stop anything. What are the other things I distinctly remember from that tour, that first one? Oh, using a monocle instead of like two, using a single one. Pros and cons, right? So depth perception, forget that. So you're driving along and you know no one has checked it for mines in front of you because you're on a night patrol and you're going somewhere, and every little dip or shadow in the kind of green misty NV genus is potentially where something has been sunken in. And I think it's that constant low level intent. You've got it going in the back of your mind. And then you stop for some reason because you've got to go check something out. And then you'll just hear in the middle of the night, bleep, bleep, bleep. And that's the batteries, the electronic countermeasures. Maybe one of the batteries is cooked, it needs changing. So now you're not covered. Again, morbid fear. And so you spend a lot of your time basically, every time you go out the door, we would always joke, dark humor. Okay, what is it today? Operation Certain Death. Oh, brilliant. You know, and you get used to that. That becomes the norm. But it quite quickly teaches you your comfort level as a human, what you can endure, both mentally and physically. You can find comfort in things that you would have otherwise just too much, you know. But the difficulty then comes when you come home.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit a lot of people struggle with. They come home and the biggest decision you've got to make is you've got to buy a pack of beans and there's 5 on the shelf and you're trying to make a decision, and then there's things happening in your peripheries because there's people walking into the aisle, and I just remember being like a cat on a hot tin roof is the expression. Just so switched on, and I could not switch it off. So that was very problematic for me. But subsequently, going back to what I do now, so for the things that I'm still struggling with, like the subconscious noticing everything on uneven ground. So when I'm out walking in the woods, I will find the tiniest hint of a sweet pepper or something that should not be in the forest. Now that's absolutely fantastic when you want to start teaching track, sign, animal foot morphology, how an animal has moved through the area, or you know, something like that, because you're seeing everything in a completely different light, and you can repurpose that skill. We'll call it a skill, not a hindrance or a hypervigilance, and make it a superpower and get paid well for it. So like, there are ways around things. It's not all doom and gloom. And for anyone who's listening to this who's really struggling because they're like, why can't I not be normal? What is normal? You know, we've all got strange things that we do, rituals, habits, behaviors, and they're intrinsically unique to us. And to a degree, we've earned those, if you want to look at it that way, through our experiences. But the challenge is to find a way to make it positive in your life, rather than oh God, I'm doing that thing again, or I've noticed that they've noticed that I'm doing that thing again. So for me, yeah, the outdoors gave me that opportunity, and I took it with 2 hands. So that was tour number 1. That was the flavor. It was very visceral, very traumatic, lots of stuff, seeing the unfortunate side effects of children, women caught in the crossfire and everything else that goes with it. And that was hard. And then I moved units. I was injured halfway into that tour. I came back, had a knee operation, and then I was doing all the fitness tests to get back to operational deployment, and the names started rolling in. The type of warfare, again, as I said, it changes every 2 weeks. It kind of flips halfway through that tour to just, it was like kinetic. And I guess it wasn't working for them because we were probably doing quite well. And they just switched it up, and it just went IEDs. And there was like 19 different ways to initiate one of these things. So the mental game stepped up again. And having been a point man and spent all my time going up round doorways and all the rest of it, and going at the front with a metal detector, and being the first guy onto the rooftops across the open ground and all that kind of stuff, like taking big risks, my heart just went out to my guys who were still on the ground, and I felt awful because I couldn't be there with them. And so Command, and what I will refer to as the Good Ideas Club, had an idea, and they said, hey, let's use the same guys who've been injured on this tour to carry the coffins of the guys who are coming back. And traditionally what you do in the UK is you'd say, okay, 4 or 5 are out, 40 commando. You know, you'd use another unit. And although, yes, you will know each other because it's a very small world and most of the units know each other, you've still got that distance from the tour. But sadly, that didn't happen. So I attended 14 funerals in about 6 months, and I found myself carrying coffins again and again at barely 22 years of age, not really knowing what that was doing. Every time at the repatriations, when you're carrying a Union Jack flag coffin off the back, and it's the first time the families really see it, and it hits. And you hear the mother break down, crying, and you're kind of got to, you know, with some reverence, offer the coffin and the guy into the hearse, and then you'll see him again at the actual funeral. So it's twice a piece for the you know, the burial, unless it's a crematorium, in which case only the burial party are invited in with the family as the coffin goes into the flames. And again, any of the songs played at that time, any of the faces, like, it's all seared in. And so I didn't really realize what that was doing. But I knew I needed a break, and I knew I needed to do something that was a bit like one step back. And so I had a bit of a brainwave, and I thought, how can I get to work with the guys down at Poole, the tier 1 unit down there? And the options were like, because in the commandos we do your commando first and foremost, and then you get your time on the ground, and then after a certain protected period, you then have to choose a specialization inside the corps. Appreciate in other military units like the army will have a bespoke whole regiment to do one thing. The idea is so that you can drop us off on a mountainside and we can shake out, and kind of everyone's got experience in doing whatever, then you can just operate seamlessly. But at the same time, if the guy repairing a vehicle suddenly needs to jump on a 50 cal, he knows how to operate it flawlessly. That's the thinking. So the options were signals, drives, clerks, chef, or the 5th one. I'm forgetting the 5th one, but anyway, I did not want to run around with any more signals equipment on my knee, like any more weight than I needed to. I definitely didn't want to be a clerk, because that meant sorting out people's pay and computer stuff. And a lot of guys with lower limb injuries, I mentioned Carl earlier, I think he narrowly avoided that when he got shot. He ended up as a driver. They gave him a driving billet, so he got some downtime. And we ended up together down at Poole. So that I could already drive everything. Coming out of training, I went to the British, what's it called, Leconfield, where you learn to drive everything from a car through to lorry plus lorry, hazardous material, like everything. There was a shortage of drivers in Afghanistan, hence I ended up driving, as well as my other dismounted close combat role. So they were like, right, you're going to drive everything before you get to 4-5 Commando. So I did that first, then went to 4-5. So that was cool, except for it meant I didn't really want to go and do any more driving quals, because I kind of had everything, and I just had some competence actually driving on patrols. So I didn't want to do that. And then where do we get to? Mechanic, or my dad was a mechanic, and I've never really had that mindset. I ended up being a bricklayer, remember? not a mechanic. And the last one was chef. And I was like, oh my God, who the hell wants to do the chef course? Because it's the Royal Navy chef course. Like, in your head, why would you do this? Sucks. Like, why would you do this? You spent all this time to become a commando and you go do this chef course. But, and I was smart as a fox, I knew that there was going to be a shortage on the billet, because I'd spoken to Sergeant Major, and he said, he was like the devil. He was like, sell your soul to me now, and I'll see that you go and you do just under 2 years and you'll be promoted to corporal. And he basically came out with all this stuff. And I went hook, line and sinker, green behind the ears, went, yes, sir. Okay, sir, I'll do it. So I did it. And you know what? It's one of the best courses I ever did. I did, I can't remember now, 6 months down at the phase 1 recruit place where the Royal Navy learned to march and do all their stuff in like 9 weeks. I went down there. There were 7 other bootnecks like me, all kind of semi-reluctant. We were in the gym every single night and we were eating like kings. And we were going out for nights out in Plymouth and jumping across on the ferry, boozing. It was not a bad gig. And I must say, also, my darling wife, Louise, I would not have met her because I met her right at the end of that course. So it all worked out. But in taking that course, it meant that I had a guaranteed ticket to go work inside that unit with those guys, and just whatever comes with that. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to go and have a little look without fully committing to selection, because you hear all these stories when you're in the commando units about what that's like, but they're like versions, and I wanted to go see for myself and spend some time. And within 2 years, I decided I didn't want to do selection because I had seen the rate of marriage failures. I had intrinsically had a look into that unit in such a way at a very, very busy time, I must say, and decided that, yeah, this wasn't going to be for me, which is ironic, right? Because it's around that time that they start asking questions going, hey, when are we getting you on selection? And, you know, that whole thing starts to take place where your face begins to fit. We call it face fits. So you get pulled into a little office and they're like, right, when are we getting you on? And I'm like, no. And so this conversation starts regurgitating. And then at a certain place in time in my career, because I have no tattoos, distinguishing marks or features, and I fluently speak another language, I'm in the right place at the right time. And so I start to step outside of my remit and the reason that I am at that unit, and I start to take on other roles and responsibilities, and things just go from there, which is life, right? It would make a pretty cool movie script for sure, but yeah. And unfortunately, I am still held in terms of disclosure to talk around that particular part of my career. But while I was there, I did deploy on a number of occasions. I deployed another 3 times to Afghanistan with that unit and various squadrons within that unit in support of them in my official role as sorting out all of their food needs for the duration of them being there. And while they're there, I could jump in on serials, backfill positions when they go and do jobs. I would then backfill the positions in training host nation or indige or whatever you call that, and jumping in on the kind of the little bits all around the sides that make up the tour. So it was never quiet, and there was always something to do. And I think that suited me and my personality quite well. So yeah, and I got to smash the gym and come home absolutely shredded, which is always a great thing to do. So Op Massive was in full swing, and hang out with a bunch of different units and different nationalities and countries that would come and work with us, including Americans. So I got quite into the culture of the cans of Rip It, where you'd have to stand up and declare if you were going to have one. You'd have to open the fridge, turn to everyone in the TV room, declare you were going to rip the can, and bang down the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, that's probably the closest thing to doing Class A drugs, isn't it? That you're going to get out there. And then you're on a treadmill for 3 hours like a sweaty mess trying to run it off. Heart's like jumping out of your chest. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that stuff would be illegal in the UK. But yeah, I loved it while I was out there, so it was cool.
Fred, did you? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, that kind of takes me to up to the end of my career when I was on my final tour. And I'd had some difficulties along the way that I've probably not unpacked. So my mum had cancer, and again, that particular unit were not fantastic. I mean, they did enough, but only once I had really had to put my hand up, which again, nobody wants to do that, do they? Nobody wants to pull the welfare card, and I had to. And there was great stigma around it at the time.
Yeah.
So that sucked. And then I was protected enough while she was going through the rounds of chemo until she hit remission. And the moment she hit remission, they were like, "You're going back to Afghan." So I went back for 7 months straight, no R&R, which is more like an American tour. And yeah, I came back with a big handlebar moustache, and my hair was like up here, and I was just not really there anymore. Didn't really recognize rank. I was just completely in a state of sort of semi-disassociation at all times. Didn't want to be there anymore. Didn't know what I wanted to be or where I wanted to be. I just didn't want to be there. So yeah, that was bad. We had an incident just before sort of mid to end of tour. We lost a couple of brilliant men lost their lives on that tour. And we had the psych nurse came out. It's the first time in my career I'd ever seen a psych nurse. And she had to sit down with all of us. And there's only like 40 of us in this little location. So I invariably do my interview. And she's already been tracking. She's watching every time I'm doing something. She's watching my behavior. And she basically said, "Look, I'll let you finish the tour, but you need to come see me at the end. When you hand your weapons in, before you go on your leave, you need to come and see me." So I went and saw her. She asked me probably 3 questions, and I can't tell you what they are today, but I just fell apart, like, done. She just went, "Okay, go and leave." And then I never returned to that unit. They had a whole case conference without me. My next call to action, because I was owed so much time, because I had been on the bounce in between deployments to Norway, Oman, Belize, jungle, like all these different places on all these different serials, counter-terrorism stuff around the UK, just busy. I was well outside of the allotted downtime that you should have. So they gave me that first, and then they gave me the tour time that I had accrued for 7 months with no R&R. And I fell through the cracks. Nobody rang me up. Nobody chased me up. Nobody said, "Hey, where are you?" Nothing. So 8 months. So I got back in the May. I got back in the early May. And then it was the week before Christmas where I was at a real low. And I was pretty much flip of a coin type stuff. And I basically picked up the phone, gave her one chance to answer, and she answered. And I said, "What's happening with me?" And she said, "Oh, hey, how's it going? How's the recovery center? How's everything down at there?" And I was like, sat in the dark at home looking at a blank TV type stuff all day long, just struggling to find a reason to be, and with my head shouting at me constantly. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." There was a flurry of emails, and she CC'd me into all this stuff. Not that I really cared about email. I didn't care about anything at that point. I'd recently woken up around the campfire clutching a litre bottle of rum that I just drunk, and it was like snow landing on the ground, and it was just the heat of the fire on one side that kept me warm enough, and my backside was freezing. So yeah, I was in about as low as I think I was going to go before anything was going to start to take place. And then they were like, "Hey, you need to come back to the base." I'm like feral at this point. So the idea of ID cards and barbed wire and going back behind the thing is massive. But equally, I didn't want the MPs to come and get me. So I put myself in the car, drove myself down there, and started. You've got to start somewhere, right? No change without change. So I started, and then it was nearly 4 years till they would finally release me back into the world. And in that time, I had come up with an idea to start a business. I had made a pact with myself that I was going to back myself outside of working for any large system ever again, because in my head it was they'd all let me down, failure. I wasn't quite prepared to still look at the stuff that I needed to own at that point, so it was projecting outwards. And then slowly but surely, done those yards, worked on all those bits and pieces to get to where we are now. And now, bloody hell, I wake up, I'm a dad of 2, and I'm sat in the office talking to you fine gentlemen, and it's a whole bunch of stuff has happened. You know, there were awards ceremonies in London, and Facebook reached out to me because they were clearly watching my little videos I was making when I was pointing to stuff in the woods and saying I'm going to do this and do that. Pretty much everything I said I was going to do, I did. And they invited me to Brock Street in London, and they said there's going to be a talk. We're going to sign the document, the Armed Forces Covenant. So I was going to be a speaker on a stage. I wasn't sure how to feel around that. They put me on a stage, and they gave me some entrepreneur expert chap who then talked to me through and said, so Nick, tell us about your business, you know, and it kind of led me on. And that was the first time I really spoke on a stage, and I found power in that. As you can hear, I've probably barely taken a breath for 30 minutes, but yeah, so you get used to it, right? And it becomes cathartic. And I guess when you've been completely flailed open in therapy for so long, you realize the power of it. The other side of the coin is that you're looking at therapy thinking, if I start to say anything, my whole head is going to unravel and I'm never going to share this stuff. I'm going to take it to the grave. What you don't realize is how much critical performance you are stopping yourself from reaching, because you're carrying this massive rucksack of stuff that's probably not even yours to own realistically once you actually tease it all apart. But you can't do it. One brain will always come to the same conclusion. And if it keeps going round and round and round, that's the definition of insanity. So I did the thing on stage, doors opened. In the front row was the fund manager for the Invictus Games. And she said, we want to hear more about your ideas for working with veterans and the Woodland Warrior Programme. So that shifted up a gear, got professionalised. The NHS, National Health Service, then agreed to put the Woodland Warrior Programme onto every single doctor's screen up and down the country, now on a drop-down list on a social prescription. So any member of our armed forces or blue lights can walk into their doctor, say, hey doc, I'm not right. Probably get prescribed something that ends in the UK in or am types of drugs. I won't name any. And then thereafter, it's like, what else is there for me? Oh, have you tried Woodland Warrior Programme, Bristol? And then they can come along. And so the way it works is it's peer-to-peer around the campfire, small groups. And then after they've done their initial kind of process with us, they get to come along and jump in on all the weird and wonderful conservation-based tree planting, hedge laying, dry stone walling, real hundreds of years old traditional craft. We bring in people who are at the top of their game to teach that. So whether it's learning to carve a spoon, or whether it's tracking, or whatever it is, or all the stuff that's in here, we actively practice that with them. We just set up a small holding, so a homestead here. We have goats, chickens, and bees. We now have a honey limited company out the backside of that happening here as well. It's just taken off. Pretty crazy. So my wife, who is the unsung hero in this story, let me see if I can find this because I'm in her office. She left the police as a detective. This was her little leaving gift. There we are. To Louise, we will miss you lots. Good luck, everyone from Team 2. So she was a detective constable, served for around 11 years as well in British Police Force. And again, superstar. So I think she got like a first in law and criminology, best recruit in police training. You get the idea, commendations. And I think for all of my failings now and my neurological mix-ups and short-term memory issues and all the stuff that goes with it, raging tinnitus, you name it, she's there picking it up every single time, not letting me fail. So it's great because I would say I'm an achiever type. I'm not a perfectionist. I think that bit of me is not there anymore. She is very much dot the I's, cross the T's, insurance policy, making sure that everything is to the very highest standard. And so together, we're away. So it's good. And I really couldn't be sat here in front of you doing as much as I'm doing without her. So she needs a mention here, big time. So yeah, there's that. And I've written some notes to remind myself. So the most important thing that's happened recently, up to date now that we've got a little girl. So 10 weeks ago, we introduced our little girl into this world, and that's part of the reason I'm so sleep deprived right now. But it's a good thing. Yeah. So I'm walking around, shushing and lulling a little 10-week-old girl in my hands. I've got a 6-year-old boy who's now into rugby and judo. So we did the jiu-jitsu to start with, and then the jiu-jitsu place closed, and the nearest one was kind of far, and we realized it was judo on our doorstep, and it was like a third of the price to learn judo. I was like, get him to do judo, because that's perfect for the synapses for uncontrolled collisions that come in rugby, managing weight transfer and things like that. So, and if he wants to do some jiu-jitsu afterwards, you crack on. If you want to pick up boxing, whatever he wants to do, I'll fully support him. Yeah. And then I've written here the importance of coffee. Well, yeah, no wonder. So with such little sleep deprivation, I've been going through every brand of coffee, looking for something that's going to get me where I need to be. And here in the UK, I have been backing. Who have I been backing? I've been backing Contact Coffee, which is a veteran brand. You may or may not know those guys.
I know of them.
This is actually Nescafe. It's not great, but when you've got one arm to try and make coffee, like instant, it's just not the same thing. I fully appreciate your coffee is going to be fantastic and have all those flavors, notes, and all that wonder. And I think that if you can afford to, then do it, because you won't look back. When you've had real coffee, good coffee, and you end up drinking, albeit out of the right mug, the wrong coffee, it's really noticeable. But at 5 a.m, when you're sat down here, and you probably see, is the wood burner still on? I don't know if you see a little glow of a wood burner in there, but it's getting cold here in the UK now. So I sit in the living room at 5 a.m. with my little girl in my arms, and I'm just drinking black nuclear horse wee Nescafe, whatever it is, instant, just to get through at the moment. But I will return to good quality coffee. So projects, what's coming up projects wise? We have quite an exciting thing happening here on our property. So we have the domestic house, and then we have the property out the back, which is essentially the small holding. They're kind of separated by some decent fencing, but on this side of things, we are going to develop a couple of old buildings. We have planning permission to turn them into like a little, what we would call a granny annex, which basically just means that, like, if your mum and dad wants to come and stay, they can go in there. It has basic amenities, and it shares power, water, drains from the main house. So that's going ahead. That's been much needed, and with the difficulties we've been having here in the UK, I could not see another possible project to put my money into as an investment where I would not get taxed to hell and back. So I'm just going to put money back into my property. This little office, only a few months ago, was like ice station zebra, freezing cold in here, bare stone walls. So we've had this turned into an office for Louise to work in, and it's holding heat beautifully. So that's good. On the business side of things, I mentioned earlier, we have now just collaborated with the Royal Duchy Estate. So this is massive. So essentially the Duchy, the Royal Estate, own hundreds of acres across Britain, particularly in the south here. So it's the Duchy of Cornwall office. And I gave a talk to a rural, basically a conglomerate group of farmers in this area at a golf course one night. And then out the back of that, I got a phone call summoning me to the office to say, we've heard about what you're doing with Veterans of Blue Lights and all the conservation work. Would you like to work with us? Yeah. So that's going ahead. So we've been tree planting, looking after hedgerows and all that kind of good stuff. And I'm pretty sure you're aware, but Prince Charles is, or King Charles, is very much keen on his hedge laying, which is the ancient art of cutting the hedge in such a way you don't go all the way through and then folding it over to make it stock proof. So yeah, so that's really exciting, and we're hugely proud to be doing that. Speaking, the book is still going really strong, being sold over from Australia to Dubai, so that's good. And I've written at the bottom of the page, enjoying the pace. So after coming out the blocks hard, I am enjoying the pace now, and deliberately slowing, and being able to be in more of a position to pick and choose the type of work I want to be doing and where I want to be having a positive influence on society where I can. And so some of that has literally been getting onto stages and doing demonstrations at outdoor shows, national outdoor shows and things like that. I do want to come to America. I've got a bit of a plan I'll discuss with you at some point to come and see some friends of mine, possibly do some work in delivering courses in America. And I've written television. Okay, so there's some small bits coming along, but I've been very cagey around that subject and not wanting to do that. And maybe some of that has been imposter syndrome, and maybe some of that has been, it just didn't feel right for me at the time. Mm-hmm. Now growing a little bit more and willing to dip my toe in the water. So you may see a bit more of that happening. And we've been collaborating with some of the larger defence contractors here in the UK, people like Babcock, in terms of, again, on the Woodland Warrior side of things, supporting veterans of blue lights, getting them back into work. And so the team at Babcock recently built us out of ship's steel a bespoke barbecue, which the circumference, the size of this thing is basically like a table tennis court size. It's massive. It's got a big rotisserie bar like the Argentinian cooking station, and it's got all sorts of retrievable cooking plates and different levels and stuff. And they came and delivered that on site, which is really cool as well. So yeah, I guess it's all just growing steadily. And all the projects that we've got going are going well, and I'm able to pick and choose what I want to dive into next rather than have to say yes to stuff, which is a very different picture to when I started out. It's almost a decade ago now. And so there you go. That's probably the summary that gets us to where we are now, coming up to 10 o'clock. Is there anything else I can possibly, one on the conservation front here in the UK? You guys in America are pretty hot on your firearms. We are facing a lead ban here in the UK. I don't know if this is a thing for you. Do you have any of this problem?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Not at all. Okay, cool. So magazine states the 243 problem. So generally in the UK, predator control, appreciate in America it might be coyotes or coyotes. We have the fox. And as somebody who has chickens and who's lost 3 chickens to foxes earlier in the year, it is something you've got to consider sometimes. So you can do all the good practice stuff, make sure they're locked away, all the rest of it. Suddenly, if you find something's ripped into the side of the cage and got in and eaten them, you're going to have to do something about that. So in the same way that when you're planting new hedgerows and you're trying to promote new growth, and when the young bucks come through and they have skin covering the antler, that's called being in velvet, they'll then seek to rub that off. And of course, they'll just rub open sores into the new young tree saplings on the edges of wherever you've planted, which invariably will invite fungus and disease and kill them. And then later in the year, just before the rut, when they've eaten loads of food, put on loads of size, and they're ready to start scrapping for the females for the rights to the harem, again, they'll go and find those same small trees and have a little tussle with the trees. So twice a year, the young saplings get beasted. And we have quite a deer population issue here in the UK, which has to be controlled, and is controlled through a series nationwide of small landowners and farmers having people coming, and a lot of that venison goes back into food chain to restaurants and stuff now, which is brilliant. The issue we're facing is that the 243 Winchester round, which is a very old, well-known round, I think it's used a lot.
That's an old school deer hunting round right there.
Competition shooters, etc. Like I'm running an old school CZ 550. Like it's probably like 15 years old, right? And I managed to pick one up for peanuts, and it's got loads of meat on the barrel, so it's been carried a lot but not shot a lot. And I'm super happy with it. Does everything I want it to do, right? Mauser 98 action, great. Unfortunately, 243 is now being seen as being grouped into the larger calibers. So 243, 270 and up is all going to be larger calibers, and so they will be subject to the lead ban, which means 60,000 people in the UK who still use 243 Win are now going to have to move over to like bismuth and different types of polymer tipped rounds, which may not stabilize in the same way over any serious distance. And so without the added expense, you've then got the accuracy issues and so on and so forth. So this is being proposed. It's not in yet, it's being proposed. So people are pushing back hard to say, hey, leave 243 Win alone. Appreciate 270 and up, okay. But can we have 243 Win? Because pretty much, as the article says, it's more than suitable for dealing with all 6 species of deer that we have here in the UK. So it kind of is the does all round that we use. And obviously you can for foxes as well. So it's ideal for us and for what we do on farmland with a sort of a classic 1 in 10 twist rate. Suitable, you can't go wrong. Modern rifles are now, what are they, 1 in 8? They're like faster.
1 in 7.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the powders are getting quicker and quicker. So unless you're a super duper home loader who's really into their data, you're probably looking at facing more expense and more heartache and maybe having to give up your favorite rifle. So I'm going to stay put for now and monitor the situation, but it's in all the magazines, as I say, so everyone's talking about it. So yeah, this is just another thing that we have to roll with in the 21st century, and there'll always be people out there that say, well, why can't we leave it alone? But equally, how do we move forward in society? Like, there has to be innovation at some level, at some point. So I'm sure there's some good to come out of it. It just doesn't feel that way right now. That's me trying to be fair on the matter. As for what Mike was alluding about, what's happening in the UK, yesterday there was a march in London. Varying reports from hundreds of thousands, millions of people turning out. I think from what I see, the most of it, somewhere between 1 and 3 million people showed up from every part of the nation yesterday to wave their flags and be patriotic and sort of have a fairly gentle show of force. And from all those people, I think there were 25 arrests, and that was it, which is actually pretty minimal given the mass of people that showed up. It's pretty impressive because there are other things that happen. There's like there's like carnivals that happen every year, and there's multiple stabbings and worse, and hundreds of arrests, etc., for a much smaller body of people. And this in particular only had 25 arrests. So I think it could be counted as a success for the nation, or that particular group of the nation, showing its intent to protest and show up and have their say. So yeah, so there you go. I was here holding a baby, but we're watching on the various channels, things popping up and seeing that was happening. So it is interesting. We are living in an interesting time. There does feel like there's some kind of paradigm shift afoot. We have geopolitical issues to worry about, and we have issues internally. Appreciate you guys. Recently in the news, there was a whole bunch of stuff that I just caught a glimmer of. And I wouldn't confess to want to pass comment on anything in America because I don't know enough about the intricacies of how that works. I barely know enough about how ours works. As I said, I'm with Team Fred, which is like I'm pretty chilled as long as everything else is chilled.
Yeah,
so it's kind of the way to be. So yeah, there we go. Does that work for you?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you did all the speaking, so we didn't have to ask any questions. So you really got us spun up, and I think it's fantastic because
It was an easy night. It's an easy night.
Oh, very, very, very easy night. No heavy lifting for us.
Just
Fred,
wind
did you have
him
any
up, put a
questions,
few
man?
pennies in him, put some cheap coffee in him, and off you go.
Yeah. Wow. Talk about fire and forget. That was pretty awesome. I was thinking at one point, hey, Mike, if you need me, I'll be over here laying down in the bed in my office. I'm just playing. I'm just joking. No, I'm that was impressive. Like you're very well spoken, very articulate. Congratulations on your baby girl, your new baby daughter.
Thanks, mate.
I did have a couple of questions kind of related to your book or just your experiences, which I guess turn into you writing your book. How did you get into wilderness survival, bushcraft, however you want to word it or phrase it?
As at a young age, in my teens, I was lucky enough to grow up in a rural area. So if London is smack bang in the central south, I was in the east, out towards kind of near Brighton Beach. It's all rolling farmland, but it's also the most heavily wooded forest dense county in the country. So that bottom corner there has got the most amount of forest per square meter than anywhere else in the country. So it's kind of goes without saying that what you get into is shooting, fishing, hunting, stalking, playing hide and seek, manhunt in the woods. Like you disappear off over the forest for days with your bike and camping out and all that kind of stuff. So all my years of what someone would see as maybe misspent youth, instead of knuckling down or studying at school, etc., was either on a rugby pitch or out in the woods. So burning yourself 1,000 times on a campfire, sitting the wrong side and coming home with blood red eyes when the smoke's been in your face, and you don't know it, but those are lessons that you are honing a skill set that by the time you're nearly 40, where I am now, it's like you just touching and operating the campfire, you know what it needs, and you do it such a harmonious way with nature, but you're at a level where you can then show other people that skill as well. And it's the old classic, if you can enjoy what you do and be good at it, then you can probably command a price for it, and then someone else will be into it as well, and away you go. So yeah, started real young, started like I think I was 12 when I got my first air gun. And then it just, was always outdoors, always in the forest, and in France as well. My family in northern France, every time we'd go over for spring and summer holiday, we'd be off in the big forests in a place called the Oise Valley, which is about an hour north of Paris. And so you've got great big, what is the name for, you shoot them all the time in America, les sangliers, the hog. Wild boar.
Yep,
I don't remember the word. It's too late at night. My brain's done. A wild boar, yeah. So big wild boar in the northern forests of France, running around there as well. So I'd always go and look at where they've been scraping and all that kind of stuff. So I had a real passion for the outdoors, and I think that's the reason I wrote in the. I think I wrote in the start of this to Finn, my boy. I wrote, "To my boy Finn, may you always be able to find the same level of connection and sense of grounding in the present that I have from spending time in the great outdoors. No matter what you go on to face in life, know that the answers lay within and are never far from your grasp." And this comes down to every time you've had a really bad day or you're in the moment, before you hit send on the radio or send that email or berate someone or whatever it is, go for a 15-minute walk. No one ever came back from a 15-minute walk in the great outdoors feeling worse. Okay, it gives you time to think. That every time your foot hits the floor and that different part of your brain fires off, okay, that bilateral stimulation, you're working through the problem and you'll come back with the answer. You do every time. It's the reason when you're out walking or in your deepest part of your sleep, in your REM state, when your eyes are moving around in your head, you wake up, you're like, oh my God, I know how I'm going to lay the concrete for the shed or whatever it is that you were working on. The only one that's not subject to that is when you're sat on the toilet. I can't explain that one, but that's when the best ideas come as well. It's the same thing, right? You go, oh yeah, no, I'm going to do it.
True.
So it's getting yourself into that state, parasympathetic nervous system from sympathetic. And one of the fastest way to do that is get yourself outdoors. The outdoors creates accountability. If it starts pissing with rain, you better put a coat on, and it has to be instantaneous. And you take charge of your life instantaneously in the outdoors. You don't look at the email and go, "Whoa, hit unread." You don't pick up that bill that's just come through the post and go, "Yeah, that didn't arrive here." You have to deal with stuff. And I think that accountability transfers into everyday life. So the more you do of that, the better you are here in this world.
Great point. So in your book, you talk a little bit about, I heard you talk about it, planting hedges and the homesteading stuff. So I suppose your knowledge of plants and growing plants, and I guess my question is, are you doing anything like medicinally with plants? Do you practice any of that?
Yes. Very good question. So my classical training is all in stuff that grows natively in the wild. And my crash course into being an accidental farmer with the Homestead Project, which is aimed at getting veterans into it, my learning curve has been like this, because there are certain plants that animals can and can't eat. And when you're learning to grow stuff, things have to be pollinated in a certain order. And so I've been learning the hard way. There is some fundamental herbs that we grow just outside the kitchen in the house. I've got like a big rockery thing, and I've smashed in there fennel, sage, rosemary, thyme. Like, you just want to throw it in a pan, cook with it, and lemon balm. And the lemon balm, the reason the lemon balm's in there is purely for the nervous system. So my little boy goes and grabs handfuls of it, he crushes it because he knows you've got to get that cellular damage. He throws it into a see-through coffee press. And he goes up and he presses the quick boil and puts the water on it, and then plunges it and watches it all change color. And then we drink that when it's a bit cooler. And that's a very calmative for your nervous system. So it's a bit like chamomile, lemon balm, chamomile, lime leaf tea. Like all of those are in that family, which is super chilled. So yeah, definitely I do use herbs medicinally. The other one I would say is meadowsweet. So when I left service, I was massively overtraining, hiding behind either drinking. So I'd come in 6 o'clock in the morning, haven't been drinking, and then get straight on a treadmill for and smash out 8 miles on the treadmill and just punish myself for the anxiety from the alcohol. I was going to just push it all out. Actually, what I was probably really doing is pushing my heart close to heart attack. But I didn't really care about myself back then. So what I try to do now is, with issues surrounding swelling and or pain in joints, I will use meadowsweet, which is the Latin, if anyone wants to look this up, is Filipendula ullimaria. That's really good. That is one of the highest concentrations of salicylic acid, which is what's in aspirin. In nature. Now, in your survival training, Fred and Mike, you may have been taught years ago about the willow family. Willow tea,
I think
bark of the willow has got some salicin in it, and it will, if you rip it off quickly, oxidize slightly pink, and you can see that color in there, but not as much as the root of meadowsweet. So the meadowsweet plant always grows in wet, marshy ground, so it's also like a bit of an indicator of water. And when it's in flower later in the year, the flower head is like this kind of like a little lamb's foot shape, and it's very, very fine little white, yellowy type flowers, and it almost smells a bit like desiccated. It's almost like coconut type thing, but you can definitely taste meadowsweet. So when you cut into the root, if you cut into it, it just goes, you'll see it on the outside, it'll literally oxidize like bright pink, purple pink straight away. And it's the root you want. So you clean up the root, and then you slice it up, put it in your press. Don't use quite boiling water because you don't want to destroy everything in there. and then make a decoction. So let it cool, or make an infusion, keep it warm, and then drink that. Get that on board. It's also very good in bath water for kids if they've got eczema or skin conditions. So basically, your body absolutely loves, most of the time, barring having some kind of allergy, loves that compound. And unlike the synthetically reproduced aspirin, in aspirin you have to have eaten, otherwise you can get ulcers. With Meadowsweet, it's not an issue, so you can do that neat. That's kind of cool. So
That is
yeah.
cool.
I would say things like that. I tend to stick to things like that. Anything that's like a blood cleanser, or something like, if you want to flush yourself through. I'm trying to describe this one. It's got so many common names. So its Latin is Gallium aprine, but it would be like sticky willy, goosegrass, cleavers. It's the stuff you take and throw at your friend, and then it sticks to their clothing if they're wearing anything woolen. It's kind of like a long grass type, almost like a hollow type stem with hairs on it, and then it's got, I can't remember, it's 5 or 6 little petals that come off the side. It keeps going up. So there's so many. But again, we all knew this stuff before, and we just kind of forgot, because we just became so dependent on things that come out of packets.
Convenience, chemicals.
I try to keep that alive. That's my goal.
Yeah. I got one more question, because it kind of ties in. I think I saw in the summary of your book. Have you tried any of these medicinal, like plant remedies, we'll call them, for PTSD, for helping PTSD? Have you played with any of that at all?
I've only tried the one, and it's not something that anybody really talks about a lot or knows much of. And I actually had a nightmare that night, so I didn't go back to it in my hammock. But generally, people talk about things like ayahuasca. There's now ayahuasca retreats that people go on. I believe that's in South America somewhere. People talk a lot about psilocybin mushrooms here in the UK. And there is actually a clinical trial being done on veterans, and I have a friend of mine who's been going through that. So I'm yet to catch up with him on what he feels about it. But I personally haven't been going near those kind of trips. We know the Cannabinaceae, cannabis family, has psychoactive elements in different concentrations, and so there are an awful lot of veterans who are dependent on having a bit of weed before bed, but then there is a lot of downside to that with acute anxiety and other knock-on behaviors. That's more of a conversation to have with a psychologist and people who deal with addiction. And again, I've not been near that. So wood betony is a little plant which historically, when we were going through our studies, we were encouraged to make tinctures, where you take an alcohol content of 25% or above, and then you crush or macerate the plant root or bark in a jar for different time periods, and you use the alcohol as the extracting liquid. And then what you do is you get like the old school pipettes, and you give yourself pipettes. So that's how medicine used to work prior to modern synthetic variations and pharma as we know today. So medicine 1.0 was you had a problem and the symptom was X, and the problem was likely Y. So you would take the herbs to deal with the Y. Now, all drugs are synthetic reproductions, so that we can quantify the amounts, and it can live on a shelf for 30 years, and it's aimed at going after the symptom. Example, you've got a blocked nose, stuffy head, you've got a meeting with 2 American gentlemen in the evening, so you take a bunch of tablets and stuff to get rid of the blocked nose and the stuffy head so you can operate clearly. That's how modern medicine would work. The reality is your immune system's low, so you should be looking to boost that, sort out whatever it is your body's trying to fight off. And so you would go after a blend of herbs that would do that. So going back to the wood betony, I'm trying to remember its Latin. It's Stachys something. It's quite hard to find, and I don't think it has much backing other than it's in all the sort of classic scriptures for helping people with demons. And yeah, a whole bunch of us on the course had a little experiment with it. and one guy dreamt that the Houses of Parliament had burnt down and his family were in them and all the rest of it, and had a really bad night, and I'd had a bit of a revisit to some other stuff. So whether it is psychoactive or not, or whether my particular brand of issues at the time were raging, I was not conscious of it, but the lady who was camping just up from me said in the morning, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I just woke up feeling like I've been beaten up." I said, "I'm all right." And she said, "Well, you were shouting a lot in your sleep." And I was like, just mortified with embarrassment. But you can't help your subconscious, right, when stuff's raging. So I never revisited it, but suffice to say, I think that there is ground to be made with that, but clinical trials are there for a reason, and you need to have people monitoring closely. And I think that we're all so intrinsically unique with our reasons for struggling, that those inputs need to be taken into account as well. That's my answer with that one. A bit nondescript, but yeah, I think it does have a place, but just
Interesting perspective.
monitored rather than kind of play around with at home type stuff.
Yeah, I know especially here in the U.S., the psychedelics are becoming more and more. They're looking into them. Guys are having to travel down to Mexico to do programs for them.
There you go.
But here, I know they're looking at clinical trials like you spoke of, and trying to get those things pushed through the system. So,
well, and I think you guys are so far ahead with terms of what you would refer to as operator syndrome. So the repeated firing of firearms in close spaces, even if all you're doing is training all day long and prac grenades are going in, it's boom, boom, boom. Your eardrum and your brain, your neuroplasty of your brain is getting smashed about.
I think micro concussed.
We've only just admitted in the UK that firing personal weapons and even basic training has a detrimental effect on the brain. So when we're looking at the concussion type, early sign onset dementia, all this kind of stuff, like the neurological impairment, why is my wallet in the fridge? Like, don't even know what I'm doing, disassociative, all that stuff. You could argue that, you could probably get that from playing years and years of rugby and getting lumped in the head or being a boxer. But you can also get that from being in and around overpressure. I'm still so sensitive to like a kid's balloon going off behind me will definitely partly reinitiate my feelings towards absolute blind panic and terror of being in the ambush again, because it's that, but you can feel the pressure as well. And it used to be much more sensitive. It's less so now, and I'm far quicker at making sense of it than I ever used to be. But things like Louise shutting the boot, really slamming the boot of the car. If I was sat in the front of the car, I remember when I first started dating her, there was a couple of times I nearly threw myself out the car just because she shut the boot so hard. You get that boom over that overpressure. I don't know if you've ever experienced this or whether I sound completely mad, but I was so sensitive to that. It really was not much fun. That's where I'd got to with stuff. So goes to show you can come a long way and you can recover and repair, but you've got to put yourself in the right environment. You don't put a poorly fish in dirty water. Get outdoors.
Great words of wisdom, Mike. Those
I'm
are the
trying.
only questions I had. He answered almost all the questions I had ready during his presentation, we'll call it.
I appreciate it, Fred. Thank you, mate. Yeah, I am well swept up now, and as you say, I was earlier today. I was ready, I had my book at the ready, and because the timings didn't work out, it gave me extra time to work on exactly what I was going to say today. So actually, it's been a blessing for me and made you boys, you got an easy night.
I've got one question for you, Nick. When you wrote your book, I mean, did you write it in one go? Did it take you a week, or did it take you months and months? And the question is related to this idea of that internal scaffolding that we've built up through life, and then you go in the military and they build up that scaffolding, and then when you separate from the service, you remove all that scaffolding, you compare yourself down to that skeleton that you started with. I mean, where were you at mentally? Did you see that you had all this armor built up, that scaffolding?
I didn't write the book until I was ready to write the book.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just like if I want to write another one, it's going to be I'm going to be ready for it. So my brain will travel faster than I can write or type. So the best way for me to write a book was to pace up and down, have somebody else pose me powerful questions, capture everything that I go off on one for like a 20-minute train of thought, and then try and condense that down into the core message. And then once we had a massive manuscript, start to structure that into chapters. So chapters 2 and 3 from memory, 3 is about bringing the outdoors indoors, and 2 is about encouraging you to go outdoors and go wild every day. And if you can't do that, then bring the outdoors indoors, like go down the beach, collect a bunch of shells and stuff, put them in your downstairs toilet. So every single day, you know, we all need to go use the toilet. You do things that will keep you grounded. So like on your fridge, we've got a load of magnetic pictures, just as the book says, of fond memories of us in the outdoors. I think there's a photo of myself, Louise, and our little boy when he was real small inside a bucket. That's one of the photos, and it was a great day. And I smile every time I see it. Every time I go to the fridge to pull out some carrots, there it is. So practicing what you preach is so important. So for me, the book was about dictaphone, powerful questions, trains of thought, condensing, and then giving it a formula, giving it like a structure thereafter. And I think that's probably the best way for anyone who now, like me, has a brain like a garage full of starlings, just going everywhere all the time. And I think that's the best thing. Like when I look back to how I was in my military life, I don't think I was as flamboyant, and I wouldn't talk with my hands and gesticulate in the way a European, more European-minded individual would with the language stuff. I was probably fitting in, and I was probably very kind of cold, hard, short, sharp, which ironically, when I become stressed, is what I'll go back to. So that'll be the caricature, flip the switch, and I'll go back to being hard and like the message only, the mission only, everything else is noise. So so yeah, it's still there, but it's I've reversed the image now. So
did you unlock anything? I mean, you know, I know like when you can go into therapy, you're talking about something over and over, and you're peeling it away like an onion until you visited that issue, and then you're done with that issue. So did you unlock anything, things that were from service, from childhood, whatever, and then resolve that and move on, writing the book?
Loads.
Yeah. And what really stuck out in your mind? I mean, the one thing that you...
The number one first thing that I dealt with in therapy was between tour number 1 and 2, I was home on leave drinking, and I had to save a young lady's life in a pub toilet. She severed a femoral artery. I didn't have any med kit. She was bleeding out, and I had to use direct thumb pressure, and just threw myself into the situation, lifted her leg up as high as possible, shielded her from it, had a good look, pulled her foot back, got a face full of it. My whole vision went red. My whole face was covered. Trying to tell her it's not that bad. She's panicking on the floor. I remember, so we've had this collective conversation years after. I was stood on her chest at one point to stop her from getting up, and she was going into hypervolemic shock, and I had the emergency services and a phone on my ear, and I've got this artery pinned with 2 thumbs, direct pressure against her leg, against her tib, about an inch and a bit down because it's retracting. And it was pretty horrific. For about 19 minutes, I was holding on for dear life, and I was covered, and she lost half the blood in her body, up me, up the ceiling, up the wall. It's really, really bad. She was in a coma for weeks, chemical-induced coma, and then she subsequently is now a single-leg amputee, and she's had 67 operations, cancer, MRSA in the leg, so it had to go, and is still trying to get on with her life. Now, she was known to me because it was a local young lady I knew, and our lives are forever kind of entwined through this trauma. And it was the first thing that I had to deal with, because I didn't want to touch any of the Afghans. I didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. So it's the first thing I started talking about was that. And when I did the EMDR treatment, the eye movement desensitization reprocessing, I started to be able to smell the metallic, the sweet, sickly. I could smell the blood in the room 10 years after it had happened. Like, how mad is that? I could smell it all around me. Yeah, that was pretty visceral. So, and then I would come out of those sessions just shattered. I'd need to sleep. I'd sleep for a long time after that. And they were backing it all the time with drugs ending in ENE or AM, like heavy antipsychotics or whatever it is they wanted me to be taking to basically just turn you into a zombie. And then you get that whole medicate, isolate thing where it's like, go to your room, go to sleep. Go talk about the stuff, go to your room, go to sleep. And I actually don't think that was going to work for me. So I would do the session, go to my room, go to sleep. Quite often, pop the tablet, throw it down the toilet, flush it, give it the finger. I'm not doing what you want me to do. And then I'd go off down the woods and sit around a campfire. So I was kind of mixing stuff up. And that personally worked for me. Being deadly honest, being very candid here, that was the process. So yeah, it wasn't straightforward. But that was the first thing I dealt with. And the feeling going into it was that somehow that incident was my fault. So I was shouldering a lot of shame and like it was my fault that this stuff had happened. And actually, my brain had got so confused with everything else that had happened, all the other traumas I was blaming myself for. Like my mum's cancer was because I had become a Marine and gone away and put her through so much stress that she probably got cancer because I had stressed her so much. Do you know what I mean? Like subconsciously, you don't know it, but we're making meanings all the time. And so that was a lot for me to have to wear and put on my big girl pants and face it. So I had to face a lot of stuff, good, bad, and the ugly. You know, and you look back through your story and you go, "Oh, I was a douchebag." But you got to remember the reason you were acting or behaving a certain way is because you were feeling a certain thing. And you were feeling a certain thing because way back when you had thinking around a certain subject. If you change the way you think about something, you can change the way you feel about it and you can change the way you behave about it. So it's like cogs. So you've got to go back and change your thinking. A lot of the stuff we make meanings around when we are kids is so twisted. Like I've done a lot of work in the UK now with the officer class. So people who on a piece of paper are very, very successful, colonels, brigadiers, whatever, and they were sent away like 6 years of age to a boarding school by their parents, and their dads, maybe their parents' business paid for all of that, and so they were constantly reminded that they were there at the expense of daddy's money, sort of thing. And all that kid wanted was to have his mum or dad be there for him, and actually the meaning made by that child was they don't want me or I'm not good enough. And actually from the parents' point of view, it's I've sent you to the very best school and I have paid hundreds of thousands of pounds for your education. I can't have done any better for you. I've set you up for life. You're going to have connections that you're going to know through life and you're all going to go on to become leaders, politicians, movers and shakers. I've set you up. And so you have these two opposing thought processes, and it's only when these people get to like in their 40s and they have their kids, they have this revisit, the little portal opens in their head and they go back to being that child and they have to revisit those parts of themselves. And so that's the stuff I'm able to help them with now as a result of my journey, going back through my repertoire and list of all the weird and wonderful stuff that I had made meanings around, which I've been able to go back through therapy and change those little meanings, which has changed the feelings, which has changed the way I behave around it all. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. You know, one of my favorite movies, I'm not sure Fred likes this one, it's an American movie, you've probably seen it, is Legends of the Fall with Brad Pitt. You know, he's in World War I, right? And he goes to the woods and he's hanging out with the Native American who's been part of his family forever. And that's just kind of really, in a way, simplifying things. That you're going in the woods, right? And getting rid of all the noise. And it sounds really mystical. It's very Hollywood, but at the same time, it's real. I think you can relate to that.
Well, when you think for 300,000 years, we've been running around with animal skins, and now both of you are wearing synthetic caps on your heads, and like the way we dress, the way we behave, the way we sit for hours on end under artificial light, that's all in the last couple of hundred years. For the greatest part of society, we've been running around in the woods, tracking, hunting, fishing, killing, foraging, making nets, coming together as groups of people doing fiddly tasks. Like, do you know how long it's going to take you to make a fishing net? You're going to have to get the whole village round. Maybe one or two people are very good at it and everyone else is just, And then every year you've got to remake that stuff.
Modernity versus traditionalism is the traditional British personality and you lose a sense of that, right? And you can talk about it. We're going to Afghanistan or Iraq. We're with those natives, and you have your own perspective. And then who are you as you separate? And you lose that sense of identity. And so how do you get that identity back? And I think, again, it is those traditional core values, that those warrior values, right, is to live in the wild, to be around other men who think like you, to do certain tasks that take time to learn, which is hunting and fishing and those things. And just, it's not very complex. It's simple, but we make things very complex with all the noise.
Highly cyclic. So
Yeah.
I won't read the whole thing, but I wrote a poem
Go
whilst I
for
was in therapy. The last line of which is, "The cycle will continue, of this I am sure, for only those who go will know what truly happens in war." And it basically is harping on to the fact that the tasks they're given never quite being complete, it's back into the forest with rich earth under our feet. Like every generation has had this decompressive phase. And all that's happened is, as we've moved along with modern warfare, we've got more and more machines and easier and faster ways of ripping each other apart, and kind of less and less of the downtime that we used to have in terms of being able to kind of like rebalance your soul a little bit after seeing that stuff. We're just kind of flung back into society, and society doesn't care. It doesn't care what you've just done. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to buy the beans, remember, in the superstore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And someone else is having a day that's far worse than you, even though you were in a firefight 48 hours before and you've just come back on leave and you're now 2 weeks with your family and your head is still spinning. But they've had a really bad day because someone knocked over their trash can and stole their parking spot and whatever else happened.
Right, and you're thinking about your mates back there, and you're feeling a sense of guilt, right? So there's
massive survivor's guilt. That was a big thing. That was a huge thing to get over.
Yeah.
Because I just felt like every time I saw a face on the screen, it was like, well, if I'd been there, I could have done something.
Well, there's a fantastic article about you on Daily Mail, right? Just guys, if you're out there with the internet, just look up, Daily Mail and type in Nick Goldsmith. But very sympathetic article about saving your sanity. Fred, did you have any questions, man, before we sign off at all?
No, I'm going to definitely pick up the book and check it out, though. I'm definitely interested, especially in the like the medicinal side of things, like the plant medicines and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's good. It's all good knowledge. It's all good. We should all know. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Well, Nick, man, you answered a lot. You provided a lot of information. It's fantastic. We've talked before, guys. If you want to watch some of the other episodes, check out We Fight Monsters or Spotter Up, and you'll see Nick on there. Were there any questions that we didn't ask? Anything you wanted to promote or anything?
Well, I kind of covered off all of the upcoming projects and bits and pieces. It's nothing really that because of the world of NDAs, there's nothing I can shout about right now. But just know that I am absolutely 100% committed to carrying on the work of both Hidden Valley Bushcraft and the Woodland Warrior Programme and growing as me, on bigger stages, getting out there and doing stuff. So, yeah.
Cool, man. Now, I think you're going to the West Coast, right? When you come out to the States, or are you coming out here to the East Coast at all?
It all depends on those characters, on what they're doing. Like one's in Spokane.
Spokane, yeah.
Another guy's out in Colorado. One's in Michigan. So like these guys are all kind of dotted around, and then wherever you are.
Yeah, East Coast. So if you're in Virginia at any time, let me know. As I've said before, Well,
I'm gonna have to sit down, plan it, and get the internal flights and kind of hopscotch around and do some sort of a tour.
Yeah, I don't want you to detour, but if you happen to be out here, look me up.
Well, we'll have to, won't we? It's a must.
All right, cool. Maybe Fred will come up. We'll have some whiskey or something like that. So
sounds sensible.
All right. Well, don't go away, and we're going to talk offline, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to Coffee Talk with Fred.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. Silencio Coffee, Nick Goldsmith. Check him out. A lot of great interviews out there. The one with Dodge Woodall was quite fantastic. Very, very good. So, guys, thanks. And please like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care.